Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, did you know there's a skill many men never learn that ends up seriously limiting your professional success and satisfaction in your love and sex life? I put together a free guide to explain this unknown skill and give you exactly what you need to use it today. Get it by heading over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com or text the word ALIVE, A-L-I-V-E, to 44144. That's 44144. You'll also get access to Man Alive outtakes, raw footage, and bonus videos you can only get there. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited for today's show. We've got Boyson Hodgson here. Boyson, welcome.
Hey, nice to see you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. Today, we are going to talk about the new Macho. And Boyson wrote this as a credo for the mature masculine. And it's been shared over 50,000 times and published in numerous blogs and magazines and books. And I think this is a very important topic because for a couple of different reasons, right? I mean, one, we are getting older. we were talking about this before we started. We're getting older, and I think the men who come to me are also getting older. And so there is a call for a maturity in what happens in life, you know, as a man who goes from being a young man to an older man, or more of a, you know, the time of life when you're more in like a princely phase to the king phase, and how to face all of the struggles and the challenges in life while also having an impact, you know, and continuing to, and even more so, stepping into having a bigger impact and being of more service in the later years. So I will give Boyson an introduction, but anything you want to say before I do your bio, Boyson, about what I just said?
No, I think that's a beautiful introduction. I think that you know, this cultural moment, holy mackerel, can you imagine a time where it feels more urgent or important for men to be examining this stuff? Yeah.
It's pretty wild out there.
Indeed.
All right, so let's do you officially, right? Boyson is the communications director for the Mankind Project USA, which is part of a global brotherhood of nonprofits conducting transformational initiation programs for men at every stage of life, and supporting a network of men's groups serving over 10,000 men every week. And I know many men actually who've graduated from MKP programs, and it's really powerful work. I also already mentioned that you're the author of The New Macho, and that your mission is to transform culture by designing change and building bridges. And Boyson completed the New Warrior Training Adventure in April 2004 and has been working with men ever since, really supporting and challenging them to break out of isolation, to take responsibility for their emotional riches, and to live their full potential, starting with themselves. And that's a piece that I really love too, right? That it's, you know, how can you have a bigger impact in the world, but it's got to feed you also. So let's dive in there. Where do you want to start with The New Macho? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you wrote and, you know, why you think it got so much attention, because clearly there's something in it that people want.
Yeah, there's much like today, the cultural moment. That back a few years ago, there was Hannah Rosen wrote a book called The End of Men, and Newsweek published some articles, and there was kind of a little pop in the popular culture looking at, you know, this idea of masculinity in crisis, you know, and we're seeing a lot of that right now, literally today. You know, New York Times op-ed pieces and a lot of pieces talking about masculinity and toxic masculinity and what is that and what about boys and all of these things happening. And the new macho was something that I didn't coin the phrase, the new macho. It was in one of these articles where the writer in one of the, I believe it was in Newsweek, kind of said, so what does the new macho look like?
Mm.
And threw out a couple of examples of what it could look like. And it's actually interesting that he used Brad Pitt as an example back
really?
then.
Huh.
Yeah, back then. And that was a back then. So, since then, Brad Pitt's kind of gone through his own dark night of the soul.
Yes.
And has had to go into the cave, himself and look at some of this stuff. But at the time, and the new macho was just kind of what flowed out of me. And if anything, it's a prayer to myself. I didn't write this piece as something where I wanted to say, like, here it is, you have to meet these criterion in order to be stamped officially a mature man.
Right.
It just don't work that way.
No.
And it doesn't work that way for me. And so, the new macho was a piece that flowed, and I can go back to it today and I can still read through the lines and ask myself, how am I doing there? How am I doing there? How am I doing there? And every line gives me a new opportunity to self-reflect and kind of put myself not in a guilt, not in a shame, not in a, how am I measuring up, but just kind of to reflect and say, how am I doing?
Yeah.
He knows how to fear, and he keeps moving. He seeks self-mastery. He's let go of childish shame. Oh, shit. Shame. How am I doing with shame today? Let's think about how I'm doing with shame. And I think that what happened is that kind of self-reflection resonated with a lot of folks, and men and women. And what I would say is, welcome to personal growth space.
Yeah.
More women have commented and shared it than men. The book that it was published in was written by a woman.
Interesting.
And she put it together, put it together, and then she wrote a response, like facing page. How does this, how would this go for women? Are there any differences that we would point to for women? And I've gotten everything from, and I think it's beautiful having women call it out and say, hey, Bob, tagging their husband and say, hey, Bob, this is you. I have one of these. It's beautiful. Or where are these men? Right. Or these men don't exist. Right. Or, and then we get into the kind of don't read the comments land of being.
Yeah.
Where I've gotten lots of comments saying this was definitely written by a woman.
Oh, interesting.
Lots of comments kind of questioning that go right to the heart of masculinity itself and question my masculinity.
Right. Well, okay. So This is amazing. As you're reading it, or as you're talking about it, I mean, it's in front of me, and I'm just thinking maybe one of us reads it. I'm not sure who you actually, if you would feel better, you reading it or me reading it or just parts of it, but there's so much here. And I think us talking about it without actually putting it out there feels a little amorphous. You know what I mean?
Let's do that. Do you mind if I read it?
No, I would love for you to read it.
Cool. The new macho. And I'm going to settle in. He cleans up after himself. He cleans up the planet. He's a role model for young men. He's rigorously honest and fiercely optimistic. He holds himself accountable. He knows what he feels. He knows how to cry, and he lets it go. He knows how to rage without hurting others. He knows how to fear and how to keep moving. He seeks self-mastery. He's let go of childish shame. He feels guilty when he's done something wrong. He's kind to men, kind to women, kind to children. He teaches others how to be kind. He says he's sorry. He stopped blaming women or his parents or men for his pain years ago. He stopped letting his defenses ruin his relationships He's stopped letting his penis run his life. He has enough self-respect to tell the truth. He creates intimacy and trust with his actions. He has men that he trusts and that he turns to for support. He knows how to roll with it. He knows how to make it happen. He's disciplined when he needs to be. He's flexible when he needs to be. He knows how to listen from the core of his being. He's not afraid to get dirty. He's ready to confront his own limitations. He has high expectations for himself and for those he connects with. He looks for ways to serve others. He knows he is an individual. He knows that we are all one. He knows he is an animal and part of nature. He knows his spirit and his connection to something greater. He knows future generations are watching his actions. He builds communities where people are respected and valued. He takes responsibility for himself. In times of need, he will be his brother's keeper. He knows his higher purpose. He loves with fierceness. He laughs with abandon because he gets the joke. It's the new Macho.
So powerful.
That's a nod to my Zen brothers in the last
in the last one. But yeah, he gets the joke. I mean, it's so powerful, and I also love what you said even before you read it, which was that this is not something to beat yourself up or make yourself wrong, right? You can use it to check yourself and see, where am I with how I'm holding my shame? Where am I with saying I'm sorry? But that this version is not one of, self-blame and going down that dark spiral.
Right.
It's actually to inspire yourself.
Yeah. And that's how I hope that it's held as aspirational as, and that's how I hold it. It's, I know, people who have said, oh, who's this self-righteous asshole? I don't live up to most of this most of the time.
Yeah.
Right? And I aspire.
Right.
I aspire to be reminded each day. That not, the individual pieces. And it's also full, intentionally or unintentionally, as it flowed from me, it's full of paradoxes.
Yes.
It's full
I
of
love
this
that.
is true and that's true. This is true and that's true at the same time, which I think for me is I love being certain. I love being certain. And I think that's a typical human and typical male kind of thing. And the more that I am reminded that my certainty is probably not so healthy, that's good for me.
Well, yeah, I love, right? Knowing that you're an individual, but also knowing that we're all one. And what you were, in your bio, that comment about it has to start with you, right? And when I work with men, men often come to me who are kind and generous and have lost part of themselves in that generosity and in that desire to be in service in the world. And so, I think it's so powerful to see that, right? That, I have to source myself or nourish myself as an individual, even as I know that I'm having an impact on the world or wanting to, create something in the world. Yeah.
And where am I, and in that exploration, where am I bypassing? Where am I trying to take shortcuts, right? So I certainly resonate with giving myself away, giving away, my own sense of self and my own sense of power. And that's a bypass. And just as never giving myself away and never, thinking about others instead of myself, it's also a bypass. So
can you say more about that? Describe a little bit more what you mean by how you use bypass.
It's a way to avoid taking responsibility. So I read a great post in the Good Men Project just a couple of days ago by my friend Mark Green, who was talking about how men can use I'm sorry as a bypass. Men can use I'm sorry as a weapon, where, I'm gonna draw myself into my shame. Oh, I'm going to lay my shame at your feet. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm pathetic. I know I'm terrible. Da, 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 da. Take care of me, Shana. Take care of me.
Right. Right.
As a weaponizing these kinds of things. And it's a way of bypassing my responsibility. So, self-centeredness is a way of bypassing my responsibility for being my brother's keeper. And all be one all the time, giving everything away also leaves nothing.
Right.
So there we go.
Yeah. So how do you, as we were talking in the beginning, right, there's life, I think, gets more and more complex in some ways as we get older. I mean, maybe it gets simpler in other ways, but there are more and more people to take care of, whether it's dying parents or raising children or as communities grow around you or you grow communities, there's more people. How do you navigate what you need with what others seem to need in your life?
Sometimes very well, and other times not very well at all. How do I navigate? And I think for me, what I have to make sure that I'm doing is the simple daily practices that help me be connected to both sides of it.
Yeah.
So the simple daily meditation or stretching or whatever your meditation is, is your meditation exercise, is your meditation walking, is your meditation sitting on a cushion.
Some way to come back to yourself.
Some way to come back to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For 5 minutes before we got on the line today, I sat here at my desk looking at nothing, just taking big, deep breaths.
Mm. Yeah.
Just to feel and to allow what I was feeling to come up in me and sit with it for a moment and then exhale and then breathe in again and exhale. So a practice of presence of some sort, I find essential to everything. And I'm fortunate, I'm lucky to have, because of the Mankind Project and because of my connections to men's work, I have men, I have men and women in my life who can offer that presence to me at a moment's notice. Who can remind me. I have something on my whiteboard next to my desk from a friend of mine, Michael Russer, and it's the stepping into presence protocol that he and his partner have put together, which is 4 steps that I am challenged to do 3 times a day to simply get present again. And I think that is it's counterintuitive to a lot of men.
I think it is counterintuitive. And it was interesting you said, to just feel. And I think a lot of men have been taught that to feel is somehow makes them weaker or smaller, or then they're not getting the job done. And I'll say, when we first got on the line and we both checked in, and I could feel the depth of your presence, and, you were willing to be vulnerable with me. And I felt that it allowed me to even just be here more and us to be more connected. And then I think to be more in service as we're having this conversation to see, what do men need? What's going to benefit men? And I just have a lot of admiration, for, I think, the courage and strength it takes for men to feel in a world that's set up for men not to feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That kind of emotional self-awareness that we are trained out of from very early in our lives. And this is what so much of the conversation out there in the culture about the shootings and about boys and young men. And and how we show up and how we've been trained. And, and the distinctions, the distinctions got to be there for me.
Yeah.
Masculinity, manhood is freaking beautiful.
Yeah.
So rich, so nurturing, so deep, so available, so strong. So like masculinity is a beautiful thing. Let's not confuse that with what's been being called toxic masculinity.
Right.
Let's not throw out the whole bucket. Let's pick out of the bucket everything that's in it and look at it and know its value and feel into it. Let's feel into what strength and clarity and decisiveness and these kind of things that are tagged masculine in the culture are, and examine as a culture like what we want to create. So transforming culture by designing change and building bridges. So I hope that
is that the Mankind Project's credo?
No, that's mine. That's
okay.
That's
Can
my
you say
mission
it again?
statement.
Say it again.
I transform culture by designing change and building bridges. That's what we need. And hey, I'm a man. I'm responsible for that culture.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for the kind of masculinity that we're creating. And, to me, there's a glaring difference. There's glaring difference being in the presence of a man who knows how to presence.
Yes.
Versus not.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Que es más macho? The man who can be with you fully present and there, hearing you, holding, being able to hold that space, to hold his body, to hold his emotions, to hold what's happening right here, right now. Like, what is more manly, that?
Yeah.
Or the guy who walks into a situation kind of expecting other people to manage the emotions that he is unwilling to deal with.
Yeah.
And every man is emotional.
Yep.
How aware of it he is a choice.
Yes. And I love that too, what you were talking about. I mean, it's funny, sometimes the language is hard for me to communicate. And I think when I talk about presence as a woman, sometimes it can seem a little more floofy. So I like hearing you talk about it as a man who is present and knows what presence is. And that men can hear you say this, right? That there is a way that when you're not running from your emotions and you're not trying to bypass them or get around them or just keep going and do to not feel them or have a drink or whatever it may be, when you're actually come back into a kind of quiet in yourself where you can face those, right? I mean, men are traditionally, I don't know, maybe this is a bad way to talk about the masculine, but you can correct me, right? But, men are often taking big risks, climbing mountains and going over rapids and facing all of these external things. And then internally, right, it's like, oh, and I know for myself too, sometimes there are certain emotions I feel and I'm like, it feels like I'm going to die,
Yeah.
But to bring that same kind of risk-taking and challenge that men tend to bring to the outer world, to the inner world.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. That, some of our Lakota brothers and sisters on Pine Ridge, the Mankind Project has a very long relationship with indigenous folks on Pine Ridge. And one of the ways that Dallas and Becky Chief Eagle talk about this is like, okay, we know what an astronaut is. Then astronauts go out and explore outer space. So the work that we're doing here is inner space. So what an adventure. What an adventure to explore that inner space, to go, to fearlessly go where no person, no man has gone before.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you want to know what presence is? Go punch a 200-year oak tree. That's presence. That's that's strength. That's
unwavering, right? Yeah, that kind of strength.
Yeah, I will absorb whatever it is that you have. And be there. And I think that and it's real easy for me to get off track
Uh-huh.
with this. I was in a conversation. I told him I'd shout him out. I was in a conversation with my buddy Jimmy um, in Austria this morning, and he was talking about checking in and talking about this low level anxiety and sadness that he was experiencing. And he was like, I'm trying to get back to like a baseline, something that feels like zero, something that feels even.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of called him out and said, like, look around, listen to what's happening. Look, do we expect that that there is a zero baseline?
Right.
Like, that low level anxiety, sadness, fear, whatever, anger that we may be experiencing, like, to me,
that's being in touch with reality.
That's reality. Yeah. So let's look at that, and then let's talk about tools to work with around how we're attached or not attached to that.
Yes.
How we can be present to it, but not hooked by it or taken out by it. So I think that for a lot of men, like, that's not for all of us right now. It's difficult to just look at reality.
It is.
And not experience emotion, not experience big feels.
Yeah.
Looking out into the world. And so what is it that we can do individually and collectively to support our brothers and sisters in having those big feels?
Yeah. And one of the things, in your bio too, was supporting men to break them out of isolation.
Yeah.
And which is another thing I see with men, that, the old macho, right, is this: I've got it on my own. I can handle anything. I don't need anyone. I don't need anything. And the new macho feels more like, all right, we collaborate, we support each other. What did you say? You can, you recognize that you're your brother's keeper.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly it. And again, shouts to Mark Green at Good Men Project and Remaking Masculinity. He just wrote a piece that got pulled on Upworthy, talking about how isolation is killing men. And that's, it's pretty well studied these days. There was a study started in the 1940s at Harvard University called the Grant Study that started tracking a group of men through their lives, and it's since been expanded to include other test groups, other subject groups. But so, like, an ongoing study that's been happening for 70 years, and what they figured out through the Grant Study was that the single most easily determined correlative factor for a man living to old age was the quality of the relationships that he had.
Which is so interesting. Keep going, but
I mean, there it is. Like, and that could be how the high quality of his marriage, the high quality of his friendships, how well connected to other people he was, and you can like start to track. You can track, like, isolation equals depression, isolation equals addiction, isolation equals suicide, isolation equals divorce, isolation equals, and these things, and isolation equals mass killing. So, like, let's just be really clear, like, isolated worldviews, isolated perspectives, isolated individuals act out.
Yeah.
When they don't see another way, when there isn't another way.
Well, yeah, right. And the thought that came to me is that isolated individuals aren't necessarily alone, right? But isolated individuals can feel alone because they haven't been taught that it's actually okay to share themselves or their feelings, their vulnerabilities, their fears, right? So a man can be married or can have business partners or, friends, and still come to me and talk about the isolation and the pressure to be great and to accomplish and all these things that our families and cultures, box men into.
Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Yes, that, like, there it is. Yeah.
That just struck me in a way it never has.
Yeah, alone in a crowded room.
Yeah.
And I am impacted. I feel sadness. I feel sadness for the me that still can be that,
Mm-hmm.
and for the me that was. The reflecting on Florida, and reflecting on Las Vegas, and reflecting on these things that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
They're but for the grace of God.
What do you mean by that?
Different circumstances, different training, different indoctrination, different happenings in my life, and those guys could be me.
Ah, I see what you're saying. Uh-huh.
Those guys could be me. I'm not that far away from
Yeah.
that, and I think that to deny that is, in our culture, or at this moment, to try and make it's them, it's
Yeah.
those people, those men, those crazies. I think that's unhelpful.
Yeah.
For us as a culture, and or it's those people who have those politics.
Yeah.
I think that's unhelpful for us as a culture, because we're all motivated by, we think we're rational, but we are really not super rational folks.
Creatures. Yeah. Folks. Yeah.
When we get right down to it.
Yeah. And I appreciate the perspective too, right? Of, we can think that someone is other or so different than us. And had we had their life experience or situations growing up, right, we could have been in exactly the same kind of position. I was actually talking to my 6-year-old son. We were talking about something, the other day. I don't know. We've been having a lot of conversations about, one time we were walking down the street and he said, those people sound like Steelers. We're having a conversation where they sound like Steelers. And so I was like trying to understand his perspective. Like, where did that come from? Was it because they looked different than him, or was it because he heard them talk in a certain way? Or like, what starts that sense of people are other, people are different, who would do certain things? Or, he's getting teased some at school, and trying to both help him feel the emotions and the intensity of what's happening to him, and also find compassion for another boy who is probably feeling scared or alone and doesn't know how to be a friend or make friends. Like, how do we start this early with our boys, helping them have the feelings, have the compassion? Any thoughts on that? You're a parent as well.
Woo! Yeah, it's a tough one. It's
Yeah.
a tough one. And I think, we're kind of working against our DNA on some level, because the kind of tribal instinct is, us, not them. And there is a perception of, I have to stay over here to keep myself safe. That I think operates in human beings, that we have to kind of use our big brain, use our front brain to say, oh, there's that thing again. Am I really unsafe? No, I'm not really unsafe. And move on with connecting. And yes, that's a big one for me. And this is someplace where I certainly fall short as a parent sometimes, because I'm frequently too quick to go to compassion and empathy for other, and all of these kinds of things, before I get with my kids to say, ouch,
that hurts, huh?
That hurts.
Yeah.
In a way that's also not, ouch, suck it up.
Right.
Like, ouch, that hurts. And to just be with the emotions that they're experiencing. And then also, it's that attachment thing again. Like, yeah, I get it. And that's one stream. So that, can we take another perspective together to look at this situation, can we shift and look at the situation from an outside? And sometimes that's not right now. Sometimes that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
That we're actually going to be able to see that or absorb, have that compassion. But what I do love and appreciate, I love and appreciate about my children is watching them over a course of time, how those things have shifted. How
have you seen them shift?
I've seen them shift from purely defensive, oftentimes purely defensive, into being able to come around. Maybe it's not that day, but in the next day to say, and I think they were feeling da 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 da, or today I reached back, not reached back out. That wouldn't be my kids' language. Today I talked to so and so. Oh, you talked to so and so. I thought you hated so and so. No, she was going through blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, good. So the kids are all right. The kids are gonna be all right. Another related thing, though. So I've been in men's circles and with the Mankind Project doing this kind of men's work for over a dozen years now. And, I got to say, as silly as this sounds, all of us, men and women, we got some remedial parenting ourselves.
It's true.
I find myself using the same tools and skill sets with guys in my men's group that I'm using with my 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Do you know how to self-soothe? Oh, you never learned how to self-soothe. Let's learn about that. Let's start practicing how to self-soothe. Let's start practicing recognizing an unhealthy anger pattern. Let's start practicing recognizing the difference between the thoughts we're experiencing and actual physical sensations in our bodies.
Yeah.
Let's start to tease apart these things. Let's talk about attachment.
Wow. I love that you're bringing this up, right? And that it really is, most of us didn't get any of that growing up.
Yeah, didn't get it clean in any case. We got the attachment we got.
Right. We didn't get guidance around it.
Right. Yeah, it didn't get guidance around it. Or guidance around gender interaction, the Me Too movement, and how boys learn about sex, intimacy, consent, compassion, empathy, connection, presence.
Learn or don't learn, right?
We don't learn.
It's not learned.
Yeah. The kind of simple question is like, how do I learn to really clearly communicate around consent with another human being when I don't even know how to communicate consent with myself?
Right.
Like, I don't even know how to communicate do I really want this? Is this something that feels right to me? I don't know what the fuck I feel.
Right. I was going to say, right. That goes back to even knowing how to feel and how to feel your body and how to know the sensations in your body. Right. So it's all builds on these very basic processes or basic understandings that most of us were raised in this world without.
Yeah. And yes, absolutely. And I think it takes a I don't have it in my head, and I don't have it, but I heard a beautiful piece of Rumi recited that was about take a pickaxe to your heart. Take a pickaxe to your heart, and it's overflowing with rubies. And I think for a lot of guys, like, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
It takes a pickaxe. It takes something painful. It takes a swift strike.
Yeah. Something to break one's heart open to then realize, oh, maybe I don't have to defend or prove or hold myself together in the ways I thought I did.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you. I think we could continue as often I say at the end of these, we could continue for hours or days, but for now, I'm curious, what do you want to leave men with? And especially a man who's listening to this and has a kind of recognition of, oh, okay, starting to get it. I'm starting to get what this new macho looks like and how I can be a man who is both tender and strong in the world, or, vulnerable and emotional, while at the same time leading, guiding, whatever. What do you want to leave them with?
So speaking of pickaxes, if you're looking for one, if you're feeling a call to engage in this, or if there's some part of you that knows there's more. There's more to what I'm feeling. There's more to how I could interact. There's more to, if you want to just go into competition, I'll speak to your competition, dude. You want to be more manly. Here's a place of exploration that you might want to look into to help you move forward on your path. And so the Mankind Project is an organization I've been with MKP for a long time. The New Warrior Training Adventure is our weekend program that is guaranteed to give you an eye-opener as a man and allow you to see other men in their fully embodied and experiencing their emotions and getting some tools to work with that. So there is work going on out there, and you are invited. This is our offer to you.
Thank you. And so do they go to mankindproject.org?
Yes.
Awesome. And any last thoughts from you personally, being on this journey? And, thank you for being a man who has been doing this work for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your persistence. And thank you especially for the beauty that you have been offering to men for years now through the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I highly also recommend checking out the new Macho. You heard it here, but you can also find it on the mankindproject.org, and there's probably other places. I don't know if you've got.
Yeah, it's searchable, but if you search the new Macho on Google, that'll get you right to the Mankind Project.
Yeah, so I highly recommend, taking some time with it and really checking it out. Again, not from a place of shame or any way to make yourself wrong, but okay, where am I with, how I am taking care of myself, how I'm taking care of the planet, whether I can actually apologize and be humble and do that from a place of my own strength and self-love. And right. So using this as a way to, like you said, Boyson, aspirationally versus critically.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.